Sharoy, welcome back to the Goonerverse podcast. What a weekend of action. I'm flying straight in with it. Are we refereed differently, mate?
I don't think we are refereed differently. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't. Because, I mean,
I don't even want to know how you are. I don't even want to know how your weekend's been. We're getting straight to the meat of the conversation. Are we refereed differently, mate?
I don't blame you. There's too much to talk about. and it's far more important than how either of us are doing. I don't think we are refereed differently because even over the last 2 weeks, I can name decisions that I think are howlers for other teams, right? But what I think is now really causing grievance amongst Arsenal fans is ultimately these decisions are costing us points. There are certain decisions that you can let slide in other games because they're not impacting results. And to the extent that they are impacting results, I don't mean this in a condescending way, but 2 points lost for a team that's knocking about in 11th or 12th probably doesn't mean that much in the grand scheme of things. Whereas 2 points for us could be determinative, and that's why we hone in on these things, right? I mean, I don't know. Do you think we're refereed differently? Because I know that historically you've been a bit like, oh, come on, stop with the conspiracy business. But
yeah, no, let's go into that properly. And there's a reason I've asked that question. And welcome everyone back to the podcast. Why did I fly in with it straight away? Because I actually almost to make a point of let's just quickly discuss it and move it on because I think there's other things to talk about. I feel really good about this team, this Arsenal team, and that's what I want the focus of this podcast to be. And I think, you know, you obviously with the One Mic podcast and I've been on Forever Arsenal, we've given our thoughts on the game. It was an intense game. It was a crazy weekend. And I think I'm glad we're doing a one-on-one show for this to really kind of soak in the key messages from this match. I think we're going to have to do a little bit of what we did pre-North London derby, which is, guys, let's see the positives. But I think the Arsenal fan base, to be fair, are doing a much better job of that, actually, than we did post-Ødegaard injury, Sterling signing, and pre-Spurs. But to the question that you just posed back to me and that I asked, I was being awfully pedantic with my wording on Forever Arsenal. I don't believe in agendas or conspiracies or corruption, nor do I believe that referees are out to get Arsenal, because we can give plenty of examples where Wolves, Man United and others have had big decisions go against them that feel incredibly unjust, incredibly ridiculous. But I believe in the past tense that we have been refereed differently. And what I mean by that, again, I was being very pedantic for Arsenal, but what I mean by that is Martinelli, double yellow red. I've never seen that in my life. I've never seen it since, and the MacBook agrees. The Tomiyasu booking when he wasn't the one time wasting, but it was Havertz. I've never seen that in my life. The Declan Rice and Trossard yellows, I have never seen result in a red card, nor have I ever seen the benefit of the doubt, just not given to the player on such regular occurrence to any other team like I've seen it with Arsenal in these last few weeks.
Why do you think that's happening then?
I think that referees have moments where they want to just flex and go, well, these are the rules. I think they spot something and they fancy themselves and they want to be clever. I really think the referees we have in the Premier League are smug, embarrassing. What's the word? They're clowns, they're cartoons. They really are the joke of the league. They are the conversation that we don't want to be having. And they are often the conversation and the topic of ridicule and mock from fans because of how bad they are.
Like pantomime villains.
Right, absolutely. And they shouldn't be. The thing with pantomime villains is that they're to do a part in the show, whereas referees are meant to be just the security to keep everyone happy and make sure everyone's enjoying the show, right? I think they're a disaster, and it's nothing to. I mean, I was talking about being refereed differently in the past. I've never seen referees not draw the lines just to make sure they've got it right. But when Ivan Toney scores at the Emirates, they didn't even bother drawing the lines to check it, and then later go, oh no, we forgot that one. I've never seen that. Now, look, I don't think it's corruption. And people might think, James, you've just listed all these things. How can you not think that? But I just think there is a sheer incompetence and inconsistency is a part of it. And we just happen to be, someone in the Premier League has to have been the victim of it more than others. And we are just that club, in my opinion, or one of them.
I'll use some of the examples that you cited now. Playing devil's advocate, but I don't take any issue with your opinion. But this is what a lot of people who don't support Arsenal and listen to this will be thinking. Martinelli getting those 2 yellows.
Yeah.
Does the law permit such a decision, quite aside from the fact that when you apply common sense, it's a ridiculous decision? Yes, the law permits a referee to do that. Yep. Tomiyasu getting the booking when I think, was it Havertz or White that was holding the ball for ages before?
Tomiyasu holding it for too long.
Does the law permit you to book ultimately the person at the end of that chain? Yes. But should it? No. Trossard and Rice. Does the law permit you to send someone off if you have some sort of inkling, or give them a second yellow if you have some sort of inkling that what they've done has the potential to delay the restart, notwithstanding the fact that you may not be 100% certain if they intended to do so? These are all problems with the rules. Now, one thing about anyone that has to interpret rules and officiate rules and so forth, it's like being upset with the copper for ultimately applying the law with a stop and search or whatever. But the problem is the law permits that copper to stop and search you with a very wide-ranging discretion, right? That's what people are upset about. And that's where I just think there are so many issues with the way in which they set rules, that the way in which they seek to clarify rules to the absolute minutiae of a game, when these aren't things that people actually care about. These aren't things that people think we ought to be improving on in the game. There are so many other things that they ought to be prioritizing. They should be limiting the prospect of a referee being able to make a decision like that. And through the lack of clarity or the lack of specificity in the rules, you end up with situations like this. One point that I was making on my channel is that, remember last year with the handballs, or the year before, no one knew what a bloody handball in the box was. Was it proximity? Was it an unnatural position? Did you have to mean it or whatever? Howard Webb at the beginning of this year releases a statement and says, in this situation, his exact words, we are telling referees that less is more. We were giving too many red cards and too many penalties for things that ultimately were not deliberate. Mm-hmm. And we were seeing too many, and that, if that is the rationale that has to underpin refereeing, which you'd assume it is, because that's what was articulated before the season started, this doesn't make any sense, James.
No, I completely and utterly agree with you. I have a childhood memory, right? What are rules in place for, like in life, right? They are to, I guess, maintain order, to ensure that there is, I'm not talking laws, right? I'm talking rules, right? To ensure fairness, to ensure order, to whatever it might be, right? That's why you put these barriers in place, to make sure that people sort of operate a certain way. And I remember being at school once, and the school day would end at 3:50, 10 to 4, something like that. I remember I would stay for extra maths because, believe it or not, I wasn't the cleverest, and somehow I'm off number crunching on tactical insight, but it's not the most high level maths. I will be honest about that. Big up Graham, by the way. That's no slight on him. That's on me and my research. But anyway, I was staying to do a little bit of extra maths, right? And I remember it was 5 o'clock, and it's December, November. It's dark outside. You are making your way home by yourself, and I just, from my locker, got my phone out and messaged my mum or whatever, just to say, done for the day, going to make my way home. And a teacher saw me. Now, the rule is you can't have your phones in school. And he looked at me and went, I've got no choice, mate. I'm sorry. I've got to take you to reception, get you a detention. I said, what? He said, yeah, I've got no choice. No, you do have a choice. So I've sworn on this podcast, we're going to have to tweak the setting for this upload. No, you do have a choice. You can recognize that the rule of don't have your phones out in school is to ensure that you don't have them out in class, so that you're paying attention, so you're not using them during the actual school hours. But post that, a guy is so the whole point of the kicking the ball away, delaying the restart rule is to ensure that if teams want to take a quick free kick, they are not delayed by someone being, is facetious the word, or at least petty, or a bit, the dark arts, let's say, kick the ball away, delay their starts, they can get in position, and basically have a negative impact on the opposition. What Trossard did wasn't that. What Trossard was actually doing, I actually think you can see it very clearly, was trying to play the ball out to space into Martinelli. That's what he's trying to do, and he hasn't reacted quickly enough. Michael Oliver, as has every other referee, which they seem to do with every single rule they have taken it to the absolute extreme and decided they want to punish people and ruin the spectacle on the most nonsensical, smallest little details, and they want to treat players like robots. I said the only way Trossard reacts any better is if Arteta's doing drills on the training session like dogs, with Win involved, and they go, on the whistle, stop. Right, run around, do your
have to do that. Stop. People are going to have to do that if this rule remains in force. Because as much as people will argue that we do get refereed differently, if this rule sticks around, this is going to happen to other teams. And
Now that's my question. Is it though? Because it didn't happen to Szoboszlai. Michael Oliver was the manager. Because his stupid thumbs up, it's a thumbs down situation. It's like Michael Oliver didn't book Szoboszlai and send him off. Why didn't he book Doku?
Okay, all right. To that end, this is the argument that I'm often met with. Then I don't agree with it, but a lot of people have told me that they think we get this type of decision because of how 2 years ago Arteta just said, right, you know what? It's me versus you, referees. Let's go. Other managers in the league aren't going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to call you a disgrace. I'm going to call you an embarrassment. I'm going to say what I feel. And sadly, I think in many ways he's now, learned from that as a young manager. You need only look at the way in which he's addressing these questions now after this game. He's saying, I'd rather not say anything. I think it's obvious. I don't need to tell you because you saw it. But has the damage been done now to the extent that, because you look at Guardiola yesterday,
if that's
basically
true,
studs up going through the chair, right? If that's Mikel Arteta, Richard Keys is cussing him out. Everyone, he's getting sent off. He's not getting away with a yellow for that.
So we are refereed differently.
I'm saying this is what the argument is. This is what the argument is. In the rationale behind it, if you think we are refereed differently, a lot of people do actually squarely place the blame at Arteta's door for reacting the way he did. What was it, 2 years ago after Newcastle? I think that's what it was. And we've not quite been able to recover since.
The 1-0, the hands in the back of Gabriel's neck. That was actually only a year ago. It's crazy that it feels like it was longer.
Fine,
but no, I agree. Look, I wanted to open that discussion. I think referees, and actually, I don't think this game is the best example of what I really think of referees. I think Turkish made the point so well. I can't remember the exact word he used, but he basically called them complete. And sorry,
I know it's a really bad term to use, but a lot of people would use the term job's worth. Ultimately, someone with a bit of authority. It's someone with a little bit of authority. They're not as powerful as they perceive themselves to be, but because they have that little bit of power, they get a kick out of it and they make a point of using it at every given opportunity because it makes them feel good.
Right. Yeah. So I didn't know that was a saying, but I think that is probably the way to describe how they act. And I think there's no better example than Chelsea Bournemouth, where I feel like the referee was on a personal mission. It's almost like he gets a bonus per yellow card he dishes out, because every sign of not even a protest, a question from another player that wasn't the captain, the yellow card flew out. It was embarrassing to watch. No one captured the essence of it. Was so. Now I was going to say David Brent, but it wasn't. But someone who just feels like they just look like a complete tool.
It was a parody.
Like you're not as good as you think you are. You're not as powerful as you think you are. You're actually a bit of a embarrassment. This could be demonetized, this podcast, but you know what? It's a necessary evil. We have to talk about it. It was just at any given opportunity throwing out yellow cards, and I just. And that for me is where you also just look at them. It's not just the level at which they're performing. You look at the way they handle themselves. No, you can't speak to me. You can't speak to me. How dare yellow card. And I honestly think so many of them carry that persona in the way they officiate. Now away from it, I'm sure they're lovely blokes. Maybe, or maybe not actually. To be fair, they don't strike me as that. But in game, there is an arrogance that runs through all of them. And if you needed anything we're enabling this behavior by having a show on Sky where Howard Webb is going to justify every single decision. I'd love to see Mr. Howard Webb, who I think has been a disaster since coming into this new role at the PGMOL. I'd love to see him justify why the same referee, Michael Oliver, who a year ago was given credit for not trying to ruin the Man City Arsenal game by giving a blatant red card. Blatant, forget the second yellow, a blatant red card that he didn't want to give, and he was happy to not ruin the game for what basically should have been 2 sendings off. We're happy to give 2 yellows to Martinelli, but not 2 reds what he should. But he wanted to ruin this one. What is the justification, Howard Webb? Then the only way he starts to win me round is if he comes on and goes, I'll be honest, this is inconsistent with what we did last year. I think he's right to give it, but I understand why Arsenal fans are frustrated that he didn't show that a year ago. That's the only way you resonate with me at all, Sharoy.
But there's also being able to justify your decision, but without, I know it's a legal term, but without cross-examination. These people aren't being held accountable. They can advance whatever argument they want to justify it without really being put to the test. Their answers aren't being tested. No one's going to be replying and saying, well, in actual fact, here's a dossier of 6 things that doesn't quite align with what you just said. So which is it? This notion that they are the ultimate arbiter of unchecked power. That's how you get this sort of tyrannical refereeing system. Yeah. And the problem with this is week in, week out, right? Even if rival fans agree with us that this wasn't a second yellow, they won't articulate it. They'll say, oh, look at you, typical Arsenal, pissing and moaning about the refs again. And then City will get a dodgy decision and Arsenal fans will come along and say, well, you're not the only one, serves you right, just got to roll with the punches. When in actual fact, if there was some sort of cohesive standing up to it with all clubs and not just Mikel Arteta and the odd other disgruntled manager, with all managers. I mean, look, I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I know they have regular forums and meetings and so forth. And there was a point a couple of years ago or a year ago where I thought that might have been constructive because Arteta alluded to it. He said, no, we do regularly have conversations with them about these things and we can try and improve them through behind the scenes means as well. But nothing's really changing, man. Nothing's really changing. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. The reason it's so frustrating is because ultimately the success of this team, the lens through which this group of players and this manager could be remembered, the legacy of this group could come down to 2 points in another season. It did last year and it could this year. I know this might sound hyperbolic, but that's life-changing stuff for a lot of people. These are big decisions. They're not just, we got that wrong, mate.
And for anyone who thinks that, just Arsenal fans crying again, well, Martin Ziegler, chief sports reporter of the Times, who always comes in with these fantastic scoops when it comes to the bigger things really in football in the Premier League, has said that disgruntled Premier League clubs are going to grill Howard Webb over referee standards. And I just retweeted it saying it was coming. And I don't just call out the Arsenal decisions. I call out Dalot getting sent off against Liverpool last season for the most ludicrous of reasons. It seemed to be a double protest. So you could actually compare that to the Martinelli one maybe. I called out, like I said, the yellow cards in the Chelsea-Bournemouth game with Anthony Taylor, who's got a history of bad decisions with Chelsea. Chelsea fans would tell you. And this is why I feel like fans want to do the tribal thing instead of actually just looking at the bigger picture. I said we were going to go through this quite quickly, but to be fair, we've had to go right into it. Moving on to the game in particular, and look, I think just when you enter the topic of referees, you can just go so deep into it because this is years of frustration. But in terms of the game, I mean, my overall message and coming out, I've done tactical insight and talked about the way we approached it tactically, which I thought was fascinating. I've sort of gone through the incidents with Everyone Forever Arsenal on the match report. I think my big takeaway and the message I want to get across in this podcast is I think we're going to win the Premier League, Sharoy. And we've been on this podcast where I've said they signed Gundogan and I'm just that bit short because I think they had a slightly better window than us. And I don't know if this is siege mentality because City are bringing the fire and we're bringing the fire. And actually, I don't want to just be someone on the sideline going, well, I think we'll win it. But, really, we'll probably finish second. I'm sort of here going, let's win it. And I can have no impact other than just project out there into the internet, which is not having any impact. But you get my point, which is to project, no, we're going to do it because I believe these boys can. And I just came away from that game at the Etihad. It's the first time, probably the first time ever no, maybe not ever, but certainly in the Pep Klopp era. It's the first time ever I've come away from a football match and thought, we're the best team in the country. I did. I felt that. I really, really did.
Yeah, yesterday was, I don't know, you ever driven a manual car? Yesterday for me, like for the last few years, we've been lifting the clutch a bit. Yesterday was the biting point for me. It was an ignition of sorts. There was just something about that. Look, for years gone by, I've always just sat there and gone, we're up against this gargantuan team. They're the best team in the world. He's the best manager in the world. We do well to get close to them. But yesterday when I saw Rodri in the first 5 seconds, trying to get Havertz sent off. That's what he was doing. Yeah. When I saw
City fans blamed Arsenal for trying to injure Rodri.
Honestly, one of the most. You know what? I'm going to get into it. I'm going to get into it.
If I punch this wall and go, well, why'd you do that, Wall?
It's nuts. It's nuts. But it wasn't just that. It was Erling Haaland going up to our manager, who's been nothing but respectful when he speaks about him, you know, and going up to Gabriel Jesus and saying, "Listen, you man," and throwing a ball at the back of Gabriel's head, like, mate, you've just salvaged a point against 10 men at home. And you have no need to be doing that, having just scored a hat trick, 2, and then a 1. Like, just get on about your business. Everyone knows how good you are. Going up to a 17-year-old, Miles Lewis-Skelly, and saying, "Who are you?" Like, what sort of man does that? You know, I think I read today actually that it was a Kanji that came out and said something along the lines of, "Yeah, they might have mastered the dark arts, but we won the league last year, and I don't think it's going to be any different this year." Now, all of that. Someone commented on a video on my channel and said, it was brilliant. I wish I had my phone with me now. I would have checked the handle. I want to give him credit. He said, for the last couple of years, we've been fencing with Man City. But yesterday was just a bare knuckle scrap in an alleyway, and now I'm all for it. Yesterday was the first time I kind of got up and said, don't talk to my manager like that. Mm-hmm. You know, I genuinely felt like, nah, this isn't happening anymore. Mm. And the fact that we could come out of there with what I think is the right amount of pride, having done what we did with 10 men, and they and rival fans are the ones trying to force us to feel bad about something that I don't think any Arsenal fan inherently feels bad about. They're trying to project that negativity on us because they don't want to acknowledge what an incredible feat that second half was. You're right. I think that has actually convinced a lot of people that even if we have to absolutely alter our style, even if we don't have the personnel that we want, even if our best right back is a late fitness concern, we've shown at the back end of last season that we can put 4, 5, 6 past teams for fun. We've shown we can grind out a 0-0. We've shown we can defend with 10. We've shown we're good at set pieces. We've shown we can retain possession. Now we've shown that we can do all of that and done it against Manchester City. We feel like a complete article. The only thing is, no matter what I've just said, there'll be a City fan in the comments that says you haven't won anything. We have to get over the line. We have to get over the line now.
Yeah, and I think we will. And I think that's a fair rebuttal from them. I think the point is, though, you know, they need to be careful because it wasn't that long ago that the question was leveled at them. I say that not long, 12 years ago. But, you know, again, for actually 12 years ago, it doesn't feel like that long, doesn't it? But it's been 12 years. They won their first title. But again, with all the money they spent, the questions were there. They got there pretty quickly, to be fair. But, you know, everyone has their first. I mean, this wouldn't be Arsenal's first. It'd be their first for a long time. But this group are building up to it, and I believe they'll get there. I came away from yesterday's match going, what piece of adversity did we not face yesterday? Now, I'm not talking refereeing decisions because we've gone into that. When 1-0 down to a City side who were on fire. I mean, credit where it's due. They were brilliant that first 15, 20 minutes. When 1-0 down, we then had to settle ourselves and play. There were sort of breaks in play that I think helped. I do think the Rodri injury did swing momentum in our favour. I'm not going to pretend I don't think it did. But then we got on the ball, started playing. And then there were moments where we looked at the better team in possession. We looked at the better team tactically. We were better defensively throughout the game. I think we were better in terms of energy. I thought we looked like we had more energy than them throughout the game, even if we were sitting in, you know, with 10 men or whatever. I liked our depth. I liked that, you know, White wasn't available to play, so Timber started with Calafiori left back. We were able to bring on Ben White. We're doing this without Marino, without Ødegaard. Lewis Skelly doing his bit, Bukayo Saka having to come off, Raheem Sterling unused, Jesus coming on. I like that. I felt actually, in terms of ability to affect the game, we had as much as they did, really. I like that we and Clive on Arsenal Vision, who, you know, are going to try get him on the podcast. He just he like inspired me listening to his segment where he basically said we bullied them, and the evidence of that is because on every set piece, they were turning to the ref looking for help because they couldn't answer it themselves. So it was, can you help us? because Arsenal were bullying them and we had their number. We absolutely did. First 20 minutes, we had to struggle to come through, where everything from that minute on, Arsenal got right, not City. Arsenal got it right. And however you dress it up, right, ultimately, once again, the onus was on City to beat us. I don't care if you are at home and you are the champions and you have the informed striker and the best manager in the world, the onus is on you to beat us. And they didn't. And especially when we're down to 10 men, they should have been able to do that, and they didn't. So for me, yes, it's not a victory, but there are so many positives that feel like one. And yes, the late equaliser also then gives you that feeling of defeat, of what could have been. But I came out of it thinking, I don't see them. They haven't outdone us technically. They haven't outdone us tactically. They haven't outdone us physically. And we're on the up. And I think we're going to do it this season. I think we're better than them.
I'm glad you said that, because at the beginning of when we started recording this podcast, I said I thought we were going to. You said you didn't. Then after the transfer window, I said I thought we might not, and City are probably going to do it. And now you've come around, and I'm probably with you. So it means that the first 5 games have had their desired effect, and have probably surprised both of us.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons I think a lot of people feel this way is one of City's biggest strengths. The way that people describe Erling Haaland is he's this sort of desperately unemotive robot. The way that a lot of people describe Manchester City is machine-like. It's metronomic, it's formulaic. They just turn up, they get the business done, and they leave. Yesterday was one of the first signs of a few chinks in the armor, with Pep trying to do something about us on set pieces. So he puts his experienced defender there, who tries a bit of madness on Gabriel, and Gabriel just says, do what you want later. Do what you want. I'm going to score.
Yeah.
Yesterday was the first time that all of their players were sort of lining up like they were outside Oceana and Kingston to try and give an interview. It's incredible. I've never, ever, ever seen that many interviews come out that quickly. It was quicker than AFTV fan cams. It was mad. And I'm just sitting there and I'm thinking,
they worked out their say, didn't they?
Exactly. But I'm sat there throughout and I'm thinking, all right, I'm 34 years old. In all walks of life, where anyone has ever felt the need to be condescending or derogatory or be outspoken in that manner, all that it's ever meant when I look back on that with hindsight is I was doing something right and it was upsetting them. And that's all it ever is. The fact that it wasn't happening before just means that they didn't really perceive us as a threat. And I've seen a lot of people retweeting those videos and saying, look, they're just little broing you. They don't have the respect for you. And I'm sat there going, I actually think it's quite the opposite. I think all of the false humility that came before was actually them little broing us. And I think now they're pissed off. And one thing about this Arsenal side, if you want to give us a reason to be up for something, and if you want to take it there, we can be an emotional side and we can channel that emotion to our benefit. We've done it historically. This manager and this young group of players, not so young now, this is very much a team of young men as opposed to a team of boys. They're good at that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, and also, obviously, there's been criticism about our approach to these games, which I find laughable, because I actually felt Arsenal did take the game to City and actually had them on the ropes towards the end of the first half.
We went behind and then we were ahead.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we turned around a 1-goal deficit. We had a better XG than them, and we were playing football. The eye test tells you that. But I sort of find it funny. Well, Liverpool would actually have a go, and we'd have these blockbuster games. Well, actually, I think you're in for one of those if the referee did his job. So don't blame us for that. Like we both come away with draws at the Etihad. Like when did presentation matter? No one cared about this with Jose Mourinho, Diego Simeone, and Arsenal were almost unanimously across like fans. People would basically say last season Arsenal were the most entertaining team in the league. What's changed? I don't know. Well, maybe having 2 men sent off in the first 5 games and playing away at Villa, Tottenham, and Man City. I don't know. I feel like that might have impacted the way we're probably going to play these games. I mean, why can't people get that in their heads? I find it extraordinary. And we earlier asked whether Arsenal refereed differently, and I think my consensus is, or the general consensus is, maybe in the past we've had some really uniquely weird decisions. Still don't believe in agenda or corruption, but we're definitely analysed differently. That I'm so sure of, especially after this weekend. I mean, we came out with two very different draws at the Etihad, which if we drew, City drew. And in both occasions, we were away. One, we were defensive, resilient, got a draw, but didn't really have as much of a go. The other, we really had a go. We scored 2 goals. We came from behind. And then down to 10 men, we found a way to grind away. Very different draws. Man City, on both occasions, didn't do their jobs. Failed to beat Arsenal, which was the task before the game. And who are they talking about after? Arsenal.
But all of the people that are hurling that criticism towards us have predicted Manchester City to win the league. These are also the same people that say Arsenal's window wasn't good enough because they only have Havertz and Jesus, whereas City have Haaland. A lot of people still say that, look, Mikel Arteta, as good as he is, he's a novice in his first job. He's never going to be better than Guardiola because Guardiola is the best we're ever going to see. A lot of people will say Saka and Martinelli are useful wingers to the extent that even Robert Pires sometimes shares similar sentiment, but people like Doku are far more consistent and far more penetrating, for example. There will be constant comparisons drawn between Ødegaard's good, but is he ever going to be Kevin De Bruyne? There will be Phil Foden's the PFA Player of the Year, not quite on Saka's level. Now, people that are saying all of that, if you're all right about that, then when we're down to 10 men and we come away with a point, and there are certain players that we have on the pitch that couldn't complete a successful pass because of how hard we had to graft, how can the logical conclusion that you reach be anything other than well done, Arsenal? You live to fight another day. And in fact, it may well be advantage Arsenal because you've now taken a point of theirs and they've still got to come to yours.
Because we are, this is the thing I am willing to stick my chest out and say. We are definitely analysed in the mainstream media differently. I really think we are. It's funny because on YouTube, I actually think it's the other way. I actually think on YouTube, we're talked about nicely. I actually think a lot of content creators give us a lot of respect.
Oh, but when it comes to some hate us. Some hate us. My God, some really. I think one of the reasons why. I'm talking about the more neutral ones. Fine.
Like the ones that hate us. So sorry. Let you finish. That was rude of me. Sorry. Go on.
No, I think I interrupted you, and then you quite rightly re-interrupted me. But look, it's. It's. I think there are certain content creators out there. It's no secret that the Arsenal fan base. You get a lot of clicks, and we're quite a lucrative fan base if you rub us up the wrong way, right? So I think a lot of
we are an annoying one. We are an annoying fan base. Like I will say that.
I know, and I think a lot of the ops are basically they're trying to get us in, and we'll bite sometimes. And conversely, I think there are a lot of people that are very complimentary about Arsenal because it also helps them tap into the Arsenal fan base in another way. So I'm not entirely sure who's being who's coming at it with credibility. And that's why I find it quite difficult. And that's why, to be honest, I can only place credence upon that in this sphere based upon people that I know and people that I've met, because that's how I can judge whether what they're putting out is genuine or not. That's the difficulty I have with it. That's
why I love listening to people like Matisse and Flex on DR Roundup, who just spoke properly on the game and fairly. There was no agenda. There was no, this is a chance to mock. There was a genuine conversation to be had there. And I don't feel like the mainstream media have had enough of that recently. I don't think, Michael Richards was trying to talk about how brilliant Saliba and Gabriel were in the game. And Roy Keane, all he could say was just slouch back and go, well, they can't have been that great. They conceded 2 goals. Well, thank you. Well, I'm glad we have your great insight. It's just extraordinary. He's one of the best, Roy Keane. I actually think he's actually one of the few that can cut through the bullshit often and go right to the meat of the point amongst all the kind of noise. And in this situation, that was prime Keane to go, listen, they're 10 men and they defended brilliantly, fair play. Like they showed something about them, but he went the other way with it. And it's just so disappointing that that's kind of the narrative. And I hear and I see all this. And again, I'm bringing it back to kind of my earlier point. I think all this fuels Arsenal. I think maybe 2 years ago we weren't mature enough to know how to handle all this. I think last year we were. We got 89 points, guys. Like we were tied to winning quality. But this year we're going to find an extra edge to get over. And I just think all these things are fueling Arteta. You mentioned the way he's dealing with press conferences and stuff. He's brilliant. And I've mentioned this a few times on previous pods, but when asked about these set pieces and getting people around Vicario, he doesn't get baited into that. He just went, no, we'll cross into the box and header. Yeah, that's what we want. Head into goal after cross. He's almost mocking them. Like, you're not going to get anything out of me. No, all we want to do was cross it and head it into the net. And we did that. Great goal. He's playing with the media. And then he was asked about, I love this. First question, Pep Guardiola said, No, he was asked. He said, Pep Guardiola has said you're one of the best teams in the country. And he went, they are the best team in the world. He went, no, they're talking about your team. And that's what I think of his team. Like, it's just like, he's just, I'm not giving you nothing, you cretins. You know, and I love that. He's managing it better. Arsenal are managing it better. And I think, I think we're on track. I really believe we are more than ever. I believe in this team.
He's a man scorned. He was so much more open and heart on his sleeve in his early years as a manager, but he's realised that ultimately doesn't get you anywhere with the British media. It will be used against you, and it probably could be used against you in the way that we were discussing earlier with refereeing too. He's just realised there is no net benefit to articulating how you feel on a front-facing basis, because all that really matters is how you articulate it to your players and how they feel about things. So for all of the panic and mayhem that we have when it comes to injuries, all of the panic and mayhem that comes with these red cards and these suspensions, and all of the panic and mayhem that came from the transfer window, he didn't feel the need to address any of it other than with a stock textbook answer, because he knows the meaningful message is the one that he's delivering to his team. And he is now hardened, and it looks as though this team is now battle hardened. Now, it might be premature. This might come back and bite me in the arse, but that's how I feel right now. So I'm going to tell you how I feel right now. Yeah. And there was nothing, and I can't help but think. Have you ever watched a movie called Coach Carter? Brilliant film, really good. It's a really good basketball film, right? But there's this scene in there where this basketball team, they're not very good. Samuel L. Jackson is their coach, and eventually he makes them really good, to the extent that they then start trying to embarrass their opponent, and winning's not enough for them. They're trying to humiliate their opponent, and he has to pull them back and get them back in line and say, listen, there's a way to carry yourself on that pitch. Don't get ahead of yourselves. And there was just something about the way that City were operating yesterday that made me think, you're losing yourselves a bit, because one of your biggest strengths is now going to, it looks to me like it could become one of your weaknesses in the future if you don't nip that in the bud very quickly.
Totally agree. And look, in the euphoria of what was ultimately a performance that gave me so much kind of pride in the team, City are masters of actually then locking in and going, we might have lost ourselves a bit there. Let's hone in, zone in. Especially the Rodri injury might be something that actually kicks him into gear and forces him to go, right, okay, you've lost a big player now. How are you going to respond? We'll touch on the Rodri stuff in a sec, because I do think that's important to the wider message about why I think we can win the Premier League. And no, I'm really not one of those fans that wishes injury on players. I'm really not. I'm not. Listen, I'm not going to pretend our chance of winning it aren't enhanced by Rodri being injured, of course. But football will never be that deep for me, to the point where I'm like, yeah, please be injured. It's just not ever really in me that. Now, I also felt watching this game, and I think this has come through in the last few weeks, Mikel Arteta is trying to maximize every single angle, every particle that he can influence. He's trying to maximize it. Now, we talked about the press conferences there, and I was in the States when he was asked by Curtis, actually, big up Curtis, what's it going to take to win the Premier League? 115 or 114 points. Let me start 115. 114 points. We start there and then we'll see. We talked about the press conference element, but then we can see a penalty at Atalanta. Let's get the goalkeeping coach, Iñaki Caño, one-on-one with Raya during the stoppage to figure out what he's got to do. Nicolas Jova is, as Graham described him, he's our 20-goal a season striker. We were saying this squad needs, but we've got it from Nicolas Jova. Jorginho out on the touchline. He is coaching on the touchline. And I actually fear that there may be a tennis-style rule coming in where they start saying you can't coach from the sidelines if you're not a manager or in the technical area, because Jorginho is now, instead of warming up, he's going on the touchline to quite clearly communicate messages from Mikel Arteta. The guy's doing his coaching badges and he's just signed on another year. There's really no surprises there. I actually wonder if that's why he didn't come on, because Arteta needed him more to be doing his job on the touchline. He's trying to maximize I know that sounds nuts. But I really think Arteta is trying to, every single little action, every moment, every whatever he can, just because it's those fine margins that might decide the title.
And I've had this conversation with Turkish before, but in the context of finances. If there is a way in which you can operate within the rules, but flex them a little bit, I hate the term, but it is bending the rules as opposed to breaking the rules. Yeah. If that's going to give you a competitive advantage, do it. because you need it. In the same way that I don't have any, it's in the same way that I don't have any trouble with David Raya grabbing the ball but then falling on the floor, and I don't have any trouble with other goalkeepers doing that. You know that if you do it for 2 seconds too long, you get a yellow. So what do? You flex it up until just that point where you know you're not going to get a yellow. That's making sure that the rules are malleable to gain a competitive advantage. So if we have to, you have to do that in every avenue, because everything that I said earlier about the areas within which people consider Manchester City to be better than us, the vast majority of them are probably right if you're looking at the last 10 years, right? So for us to be able to sort of reverse that proposition, we have to gain that advantage in any way that we can.
What do you make of the Rodri injury, which we touched on there? You know, no one's wishing injury on a player. It has happened. It's really, you know, and actually this is when sometimes things you say have aged well. I was actually on this podcast, I think, with you saying, you know, why are we not listening to those who have been there and done it, which is Rodri, which is De Bruyne, which is Bernardo Silva, which is Gundogan, who have talked about there being too many games. I mean, while I think a lot of them, Bernardo Silva being one of them, have talked complete and utter nonsense since the game. I think pre-match, in terms of the amount of football being played, was something I didn't laugh or scoff at. I absolutely took it seriously and listened. And now Rodri is probably looking at the powers that be and going, here's what's had to happen to me for my message to come across the way it should have. Because that message that he sent, you know, before the Champions League just got 10 times louder. You know, that quote is now doing the rounds again, and the conversation has restarted. Now, he wouldn't have wanted to. He'd much rather have a working knee and be able to play football. But there'll be a part of him that's going, I told you lot. I really told you lot. I was just sprinting at the near post from a corner and my ACL went. What do you make of it from the time? In fact, no, actually, let's talk about what I just mentioned there, which is the message about too much football. But then what's your thoughts on it impacting the title race?
Look, I can't begin this conversation without saying that all the people who are tweeting about Rodri's injury in some sort of celebratory fashion, like, it's disgusting.
Stop. Weirdos.
Stop. Yeah. Just stop. Like, you know, what are you doing, man? Like, this is the guy's livelihood. Like, it's one of the most unnecessary things I've seen. And I know that people can say, oh, but they did it when Odegaard was injured, but two wrongs don't make a right. But a word of caution to those that are sort of thinking that the title is absolutely ours now. I felt as though psychologically City could have been damaged when they got hit with that many charges. They were bloody incredible after that, and they went and won the league. When De Bruyne was out, yeah, treble. When Haaland and De Bruyne were injured last year, we all said, this is our chance. We went and fluffed our lines against West Ham and Fulham in that period. We didn't make it count. Even though they had some bad results in there, we didn't flex, didn't do our job properly, and that's why we didn't win the league. And we've already lost Odegaard. That's one of those positions where we don't have any cover. Rodri's another one of those positions where they don't have adequate cover. Odegaard's not the only position in our team where we could be in trouble if we get another one. A word of caution to those celebrating too early. There is nothing to suggest that this couldn't happen to one of our other players. Who's to say that because of the amount of football, don't forget, Rodri was reintegrated into this very late after the Euros. Same with Foden. Yeah. Same with Foden. And I mean, look, Foden's not injured, but I think he was recovering from illness. But they were as prudent as they could be with Rodri. And I don't know what his athleticism is like compared to others, but I look at him as an engine, and I look at him as a physical specimen, and I think this guy's probably one of the fittest out there.
Well, I think his injury record's immaculate. I'm going to have a quick look, but I think his injury record's immaculate.
I wouldn't be surprised if it is, but if he's going down, then you don't need any more evidence to substantiate the fact that there is a problem with the amount of fixtures. And I was sort of taken aback by how early the Champions League started this year, and the fact that we had Atalanta in between those two away games. And I was worried about the impact of that. I've looked at our fixture list for the rest of the year, mate. It doesn't stop. It does not stop.
He last time he was injured was 2020. He missed one
and
game.
The only games
one day with a knock. He didn't miss a game. So 1920 season was the last time, pre-pandemic was the last time he actually missed football through injury.
There you go. Because the only times that I can remember him missing games, I mean, it was because of bans or suspensions. And my point is, if it can happen to him, anyone can get it. Anyone can get it. So don't laugh too soon if you are one of those people that wants to laugh at all.
Yeah.
But one thing we did say on this podcast is if Arsenal are to win the title, because of the fact that City are City, we might need a little bit of luck along the way. Now, I hate describing someone else's misfortune as our luck, but in its most basic rudimentary terms, it gives you a competitive advantage when another team loses one of their most important, but in my opinion, their most important player. I know a lot of people look at me and say it's daft to not say it's Haaland, but I've seen them win a lot more without Haaland than I've seen them win without Rodri.
Yeah, a lot of people agree with you that it's Rodri. Ultimately, they are not as good without Rodri than they are with him. People say the stats back that actually they're better equipped this season to deal with the absence of a Rodri because Rico Lewis is maturing. Kovacic can play there. Gundogan's been signed. They've still got Núñez. Yeah, their midfield options this season are still, Gundogan, Kovacic, Núñez, De Bruyne, Bernardo, and Foden. Those are six central midfielders before you get to the forward line. If you've plucked players from there, Oscar Bob, of course, is injured, but you've got, Doku, Savino, whatever. Anyway, I'm waffling. My point is they've still got a lot of quality players, but Rodri just feels really particular and unique in that squad, not because of his quality, but because of his profile too. I don't think teams are as worried about running at Kovacic and Gundogan as they are Rodri and Gundogan or Rodri and Kovacic or whatever it might be. City are a worse team without him, but would it surprise me if Pep conjured up something that, put them on another 10-match winning run? No, because he's brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant. In everything I've said about Arsenal, it's not to diminish Man City. It's how much I'm starting to rate our team. It's chess, guys. I'm a fan and I'm believing in my team, but I'm not taking from City and what they have done over the last 4 years and how good Guardiola is. Now, do I think they're as good as 2-3 years ago? No, but that doesn't mean I don't think they're good, nor that I don't think they're elite and title-winning caliber. What his solutions will be interesting, but how teams now approach playing City will be interesting. They've got Newcastle away next. I mean, that's arguably profile-wise one of the hardest matchups because you're coming up against a Joe Linton, a Tonali, a Guimaraes, a Joe Willock, a Sean Longstaff, who will stick it on you, and actually one of the players to A, match them physically, but B, get on the ball and ensure their physicality doesn't matter, is Rodri. So that's going to be interesting. I actually think they're going to win that game because Newcastle, which got peppered by Fulham the other day. Does it improve our chance of winning the Premier League title in a very kind of, harsh but honest assessment of it? Yes, it does. But like you said, we're navigating this without Ødegaard. And again, I've mentioned Clive and his brilliant segment on Arsenal Vision, but his fear is how do we deal against the low blocks we're going to come up against in the next few weeks? Well, if you're going to miss Ødegaard, it was for those games, not for these. We won at Tottenham and we could have won at Atalanta. Probably shouldn't have, but we could have. And we were winning at Man City. So Ødegaard, his absence wasn't felt as much, which when I was kind of hinting at that, people, I think, were thought, really, our captain? But we might massively in these next few weeks.
Give Calafiori the ball at the edge of the box. It'll be fine. It'll be absolutely fine. How many times in the last 6 months have you sat there and gone, when are we just going to have a player who can just slap it in the back of the net out of nowhere? He comes along and does that. Look, I can't, with the whole Rodri thing, I was having this conversation as soon as the news came out. I kind of looked at it, didn't think too much of it and put my phone down because the message has to be, last season, Arsenal, you didn't win the league because of how good City were. You didn't win the league because there were games that you could have won that you didn't. Handle your business, do your job. You're good enough to get over the line. And that's always the way that I will look at it. And I firmly believe that's the way that Arteta looks at it. Stop looking left and right. Stop looking over your shoulder. Just handle your business.
Yeah. Full steam ahead. This is the point that was made on social media, and some people might say it's kind of petty and pointless, but I'm going to regurgitate it. That is regurgitated the word, which is that, when Liverpool were defending their title and Van Dijk had a season-ending injury, I remember the narrative around Liverpool. There was little to no sympathy for them. And then when they did get their players back fit, they went for the quadruple, right? So they shut everyone up about that. When Saliba got injured in the run and no one cared, and Tomiyasu. And the absence of Timber, no one really kind of felt had massive impact on us last season. We're seeing this season in big games where he would have played a part. I'm holding City to those same standards. While my sympathy is with Rodri, it's not with Man City.
Yeah.
You've got the money, you've got the players. Okay, he's not had a single injury since the 1920 season that's kept him out of a game. Now, it's kind of all cashed in at once, which is kind of crazy and extremely unfortunate. We wish him all the best. But how do they navigate this? No, for me, I don't see them as, while they're not as good a team, if they don't win the league and we do, while I'll be delighted and I'll talk about everything we did great, there should be, and we're miles from that. But my point is there should be scrutiny on Man City and what they don't do in the absence of Rodri if it turns out that their performances do drop.
And one thing I will say about the City fans that I know, they would agree with you. I haven't had one of them asking for sympathy or looking for it. They've said, look, we've got the best manager in the world.
Yeah,
we've got the best squad in the world. You guys get excited about our injury, we'll find a way. So fair play to him.
No, yeah, totally. And all of this is big ifs, guys, because I think amongst all this, I'm sure my message could easily come across as, we're great, we're amazing, I'm excited, and the title swung in our direction yesterday. It did in terms of my belief that we can win it and that we're going to, but I still think there is an awfully long way to go. We still have 33 games to play.
Yeah.
33. There's so much football to play. But I just wanted to get those out there because around the Rodri discussion, it's been interesting. We are, a couple of minutes ago, Bolton. Look, I think how important the Carabao Cup conversation has been done to death. But I will say this, Sharoy, that I will be gutted if we go out of the competition. I'll be gutted if we go out of it.
It's not an option. It's not an option. You can't give a team praise for showing that much spirit, going away to Atalanta and getting a hard draw because you want to go the distance in that competition. We can't sit here and say Arsenal have to get over the line in the Premier League because we don't have silverware and go out against Bolton in the first round of another trophy. I'm not equating this to the Champions League. I'm not equating it to the Premier League, but momentum's a big thing. It's no secret that we need silverware. When you look at legacies over a 10-year period of a manager, they don't just tell you how many Premier Leagues and Champions Leagues they've won. They tell you how many trophies they've won. Those are memories that players, fans, managers all look back on. And the Carabao Cup is one of them that some very, very prominent and fantastic managers have taken seriously over the years, right? I don't want all of the good work that we've done. First 5 league games, I would have taken this set of results pre-injuries, pre-bans. I would have been happy with 11 out of 15 points. And I would have taken a point at Atalanta. Don't undo that good work. Don't stop that momentum. Don't let people think there's some sort of vulnerability that we can't rotate and beat a team like Bolton, no disrespect. This is the start of a few home games now. We've come through the difficult patch. Don't take your eye off the ball. There's a tendency, not necessarily amongst Arsenal, but it's human nature to have your eye on a really difficult feat. And once you've got to that sort of midpoint, you just take a sigh of relief and then you just take your foot off the gas a little bit and something comes and bites you in the arse. This is that sort of game. This is that sort of game. I would.
As is Leicester on Saturday.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I totally agree.
The
job's not done till it's done. Please don't think it's done till it's done. And I think that's hopefully a message that the Arsenal players have learned in the last 2 title races. But I really hope that this is one that's going to come through to them now. I mean, they've done so much great work in these first 5 games, 3 wins, 2 draws. The 2 draws have immense context. I think we could easily be on 15 out of 15 points. And that's why my belief is through the roof, because if we'd started with 2 wins and 3 draws at Villa, Tottenham and Man City, I'd be going, well, that's actually not, it's disappointing, but it's actually not that bad. And we're on, and you'd make positives out of it. So to come out with the context and the points that we have, I'm super, super proud of the team. But build on it, book your place in the next round of the Carabao Cup, hope for another decent draw, go again. Before you know it, you're in the quarterfinals. Before you know it, you're in the semi-finals. And suddenly it's, okay, this is exciting. Maybe you've won 4, drawn 2 of your Champions League games. You're, neck and neck with Man City and Liverpool, maybe in the title race. And you're in the semi-final of a Carabao Cup, and things around Christmas start to get really, really exciting as Odegaard's been back for a month. Marino's been back for a month or 2, and everyone's settled in, and we're starting to see what this team can be. Calafiori, Timber's well past his knee problems, and things could look so different. But what if they don't? Like, what if,
yeah,
you know?
Yeah, that and also, and it means that we don't have to have these bloody debates with Manchester United fans as to who's had a better season at the end of the year. You know, just how frustrating is that? When we know that we're so superior to so many of these teams, but they come along and go, it doesn't matter, second and fourth is the same. We have a trophy and you don't. And there is no real answer to that because they have won something. Yeah. And that's why I would always say, particularly at this stage, right? If you get taken out when you're going machine for machine against City in the semi-final, or Liverpool, you get drawn at Anfield or whatever, then so be it, man. But this and how when was it that you were losing your rag? Was it when we went out to Southampton? Was it FA Cup?
Yeah, maybe.
I can't remember how many years ago that was. But we've kept making the same mistake year after year after year after year. And if we're going to say that we've learned in so many other avenues and we've become battle hardened and we've got that depth of squad now, and there is this base level and there is this philosophy where these youngsters can come in and things don't look interrupted. And there are certain youngsters that we've had on the bench that we were saying should have probably started against Tottenham. The talking's done. Now's the time. Get through to the next round.
Miles Lewis-Skelly, Ethan Waneri, Cabia as well as a youngster that's been talked about. They could all be getting debuts against Bolton, as could Raheem Sterling, of course, and Gabriel Jesus. Much needed to start to build some momentum. Calafiori could play against Kivior, so we'll see. Unfortunately, no debut for Neto as he's cup tied and Setford's apparently injured, so we'll see what happens with the goalkeeping situation. But look, I think we've really hashed it out over a few topics there. The Rodri injury, the refereeing standards in the league, and the kind of overarching point for me, which is Arsenal can win the league this season. Arsenal can. And actually, I'm starting to say we will. That's how much I've seen from the team so far. And it's probably 5 games in. It's crazy to change your opinion. Maybe wait till 18, James. But you know what? This kind of rivalry that's starting to build with City is bringing out I almost don't really care what I actually believe. I want to ride the wave with the club of, no, we're going to, because the disappointment will feel all the same at the end. I hope you guys kind of know what I mean by that. But Sharoy, mate, always brilliant. And everyone go check out the One Mic podcast on Sharoy's voice. And yeah, man, it's been a pleasure.
You know what? I mean, I'm not saying that I don't enjoy the ones where we have guests. I love those too, man. But these ones will always have a special place in my heart, bro. Because I forget that we have an audience when it's just the two of us, man. I'm just like, I'd do this on a Saturday night at a pub. You know, I mean, this is always fun.
It's great fun. And the reality is, we're an hour, 2 minutes in. I could go another 2-3 hours, but I'm going to get back to the big 6. You need to go recover because bless your heart, you've been ill, as I was a week ago. Everyone, match report will be coming out on Wednesday after the Bolton game. Of course, the One Mic podcast every Monday. More content to come from Sharoy as and when that's ready to go, and a video on Friday with the big game against Leicester on Saturday. I'll actually be in the AFTV studio. I think you will be too.
I will be.
Nice. So we'll be our first watch along the season together. I'm looking forward to that. Goonerverse takeover on AFTV. Everyone, big thanks. Catch you soon. Really hope you've enjoyed another episode of the Goonerverse podcast with Arsenal fans from around the Arsenal world giving their amazing thoughts. A big thanks to our guest today. If you do want to follow this podcast on the go, you can. It's available on podcast platforms as well. Join us next week where we'll get more Arsenal fans to talk all things Arsenal. A big thank you again.